Hello, 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 magic makers. It is Bronlee from chooselifehealing.com coming at you live on a Wednesday morning in my part of the world. It's gone with my hair here, sorry. Um, just fixing a bit of a hair issue there. If you are joining me, please pop a comment in, let me know where you're joining from. My hair's still wet. I actually had a shower not long ago. I've been up since 4:30 this morning, nearly 5 hours now. I only just had a shower. I work in my pajamas in the morning. There's a bit of a secret about me. All right, if you're joining me and you work in your pajamas or you've still got your pajamas on, or even if you don't, even if you're fully clothed and showered, pop a comment in and say hello. Let me know where you're joining me from. I'm just inviting some people along as I speak who might be hanging around and like to catch this live. And I will finish that so I can join you. Hey, Christine, good to see you. So I wanted to talk to you today because when people end up knocking on my door, when they come to me, they have generally tried everything. So they've tried numerous self-help things, they've tried, you know, all the books, they've tried all sorts of stuff, and generally they've also tried some form of traditional, conventional type therapy, whether that's counseling, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers. They've tried what we in the trauma world, or some of us in my community, know as cup of tea therapy. So this is kind of a let's sit, have a cup of tea, and tell me all about your problems, right? Tell me all about your problems. Unload on me, like tell me all about the things that have happened to you in your past, and let's go back over it and over it and over it again. Now, I have myself been in that type of therapy in the past, and for many years I resisted therapy entirely. In hindsight, that might have actually been to my benefit rather than my detriment. I'm not saying that therapy is a bad thing, and I'm not saying therapy doesn't have a place and conventional therapies don't have a place. Absolutely not saying that. It definitely does. But prolonged exposure, if you like, to this kind of therapy where, you know, you're really kind of not moving anywhere. There's the therapy, and I've had it before. I actually had I had a great psychologist once, and he was really good, not because he helped me necessarily, but because we had really good chats. We would talk about the world and the woes of the world. He was actually probably feeding my depression when I think about it, because he was very much an enabler. Like I would be like, oh my God, the world sucks. And he'd be like, yeah, you're right. And so maybe he needed therapy, I don't know. And so we would sit there and sort of share in this very dense kind of energetic frequency, you know, where the world was horrible and everything was bad and, you know, really, really heavy, dense energy. That's the best way to describe it. So I liked him because he became sort of my comrade, and he became very much, in hindsight, my enabler. He actually allowed me to wallow in that feeling of, you know, doom and gloom and despair. Funnily enough, how ironic. So I myself have experienced talk therapy before. I have done talk therapy, all the rest of it. And you know, there was probably a time where I thought it was perhaps a bit cathartic to sit down and sort of unload our story. And goodness knows I used to be really good at like sharing my stories with people. I would do it with humor, like I would sort of do it with this underlying humor, but ultimately that humor was hiding a lot of pain that was still lingering and a lot of the emotional charge that still lingered around those stories. So frequently people kind of probably assumed that I, you know, wasn't that bothered by the things that had gone on in my past and the trauma I'd experienced, because I could laugh about it. But, you know, the laughter was really just masking the underlying pain. So what I came to realize when I actually and did the deeper work and the deeper healing and cleared this at the subconscious level, is the reason talk therapy doesn't work is because all of the associated energetic residue, emotional residue of the trauma itself, and the residue of the experience. So that includes unconscious core beliefs that establish. So if we have a really particularly traumatic event and that involves a sense of abandonment, and we end up with an unconscious core belief around abandonment, that is the result, right? So basically the trauma occurs, the thing occurs in our life, and the unconscious core belief establishes, and we start to feel like everyone abandons me. And so then we end up sitting in that unconscious core belief. So what happens, the effect of trauma on our body is really important to understand, in understanding why talk therapy often misses the mark. It doesn't quite get to the heart of the problem, and people often just end up in talk therapy for years and years and years. Some people who come to me have been in therapy for they're like, oh, I've been in therapy for 8 years. I probably should have been in therapy for 8 years by rights, at least. So I know where those people are stuck, and I know how it feels to be stuck there. And it just boggles me that there is still all of this, like, this is how we should do it, even though this is how we should do it hasn't been working. People are still stuck. Why are we still doing it? It's the very definition of the insanity, as Einstein said. You know, you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. It doesn't work. So years and years and years and years of talking about it isn't working. It doesn't work, right? Because it doesn't resolve the trauma where it resides. It doesn't actually visit the trauma where it sits within us, right? It just sits on the surface. The effects of the trauma are compounded over time, and they are buried very, very, very deeply. The conscious awareness of how that trauma is impacting us is almost non-existent, right? The conscious awareness of how the trauma impacts you are some of the symptoms you experience. But frequently we're not even aware that those symptoms are related to the underlying trauma at that deeper level that resides in us. We're not aware of that. So consciously, we're not even aware that this stuff is there. And therefore, any kind of consciously aware, let's talk about it type healing or therapy that we engage in is not necessarily, any process is not necessarily going to assist us. So not in the long term, and it's not going to resolve the trauma sufficiently to eliminate the emotional charge and give us back our power over that past pain. So in order to properly resolve the trauma, we need to visit it where it resides. We need to actually acknowledge it is not residing in our conscious mind. Our conscious mind makes up about 5% of what we do all the time. That's it, 5%. Our unconscious mind controls everything else. It is controlling our digestion, our heartbeat, our breathing, our respiration, all of it, everything that keeps us alive and functioning, our parasympathetic nervous system. So all of this is being controlled by the unconscious mind. That is why talk therapy, also controlled within the unconscious mind, of course, is a lot of the decisions we're making. About 95% of all of the reactions we have throughout our day, how we respond to things, whether we say yes, whether we say no, whether we go left, whether we go right, most of those decisions are being made at an unconscious level without us being aware of it. Could you imagine if you had to think about every thought you had? Could you imagine if you had to go through the process, the actual mechanics of making yourself recall something, think something, make a decision? Could you imagine how much longer your life would take, like your days would take to get through? Probably be like snail's pace. By the time like sun rose and sun set, you might have like had a shower. And that's all you would achieve in your day, because every little thing you do, waking up, which side of the bed you get out on, how you put your clothes on, how you shower, how you brush your teeth, how you brush your hair, putting your makeup on, all of this sort of stuff is if you had to think about every little mechanic of that and little part of that and little component of that, which your unconscious mind is taking care for you, you'll be exhausted and you'll get nothing done. It would take you a long time just to do one thing, like get out of bed. Okay, I have to think about getting out of bed. Right, so do I get out of bed on that side or on that side? Well, I can't really get out of bed on that side because there's more bed there. But on this side, oh, there could be danger. There's something on the floor. Oh, do you know? You don't do that. It's just your unconscious goes, yep, I know what to do. And I do it, right? I direct you. See, unconscious mind is like the director, and talk therapy is talking to the actor. The actor doesn't know what's going on. The actor's just playing a part. The actor's just wandering around, saying the lines, meeting the people, going to the places where the director tells them to go. And the unconscious mind is the director. The conscious mind is the actor. So talk therapy talks to the actor and not the director. And this is why it often fails to properly resolve the emotional charge of the trauma. If you're joining me live or if you're catching this on replay and you have experienced this with talk therapy, if you yourself have been, at the mercy of talk therapy for many weeks, months, years, perhaps, as many people are, then, pop a comment in. If you can relate to this, if you feel like you've gone round and around and around on a merry-go-round of talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and nothing's actually changing, or what will happen, a lot of people say, oh, it helped for a little bit, and then I kind of started to feel worse. Some people will report feeling worse almost immediately upon commencing some kind of conventional therapy, particularly if it's a more aggressive type therapy around trauma resolution. Now, there's things like exposure therapy, regression therapy. There's various processes and practices that are used, and a lot of them are very like, let's get in there and let's confront the trauma, but it's confronting it still from a place of emotional charge. We have to deal with a number of things before we actually get to confronting the trauma. You can't just march on in there and go, I'm going to deal with this trauma, because it traumatized you all the way back then. And chances are, if you just march your way into it without being properly prepared, it's like going into war with a toothpick. Charge. I don't know what I'm actually charging at, but I've got a toothpick. It's very ineffective, and what we can actually do is come out with more battle wounds, and we can come out re-traumatized and re-triggered. So this is why it's very, very important that we have to know how to go there, the way to go there, and the processes before we actually get to the place where we are confronting that as I'm in charge here. I am the director now. So we're assuming we have taken on, we've kind of like, we're the actor, and then we've got into the driver's seat. We've assumed control of the unconscious mind, and we put the director's hat on, and we've sat in the director's chair, and now we have power over this situation, not the other way around. But we have to know how to get there. So important. So important. You can actually do more harm than good if you don't do that. So the reason that people hit a ceiling when they do talk therapy generally is because there's these unconscious core beliefs rattling around. And the talk therapy, because it is happening consciously, is not acknowledging and not addressing the unconscious mind, which is, like I said, the director. It's where everything's happening, right? It's like if you're the producer of a movie, and as the producer of the movie and you want a certain movie produced in your name, instead of going to the director and saying, look, this is what I want you to get the actors to do, you go to one actor, and he's got no power. So this is kind of what talk therapy does. So we bypass the actor and go to the director, right? And then we assume the director's role. And this is where our power lies. And this is the place from where we can address that past trauma, and we can visit where it resides. But first we have to assume that role. We cannot go there as the unwilling actor, because then we're kind of just the victim of circumstance. We don't know what's coming up, and we're not controlling the show. So that's one of the reasons that people hit the ceiling, is because they do not get to the place of the unconscious mind where the director is sitting, and the actor might be like, yes, I've got this role. I know where I'm going. Awesome. It's all good. But then I get to this point and I get to this fork in the road and I get to this part of the movie and I haven't read the script yet. So I'm not quite sure where to go now. I'm a little bit lost. Where do I go? What? Oh. And then all of a sudden, the actor is just, you know, dazed, confused, a bit, and people go back, you know, he'll retrace his steps then. Oh, I mean, I better go back to the last scene and revisit that. And where am I supposed to go from here? Because the director's not directing me. So rather than get lost and confused with talk therapy, we need to, like I said, go to where the trauma resides. Because, you know, you'll keep just hitting, I call it the internal glass ceiling, keep hitting it. We want to smash through it. We want to smash through it by smashing through the unconscious core beliefs, you know, and actually getting to that ivory tower where the director's sitting, lording it over us. I say that jokingly. The unconscious mind, I call it our frenemy. Like, oh, the frenemy within. You know, it's like, I got your back, I'm keeping you alive, but I'm also keeping you in a like little tiny comfort zone. And yeah, I know it sucks a little bit. Oh, and I'm keeping you in a bit of lack too. Yeah, I know that sucks, but it's not safe for you to be successful, so don't do that. And I know I'm kind of keeping you invisible, even though like you want to do stuff and you want to be out in the world connecting with people, but nope, sorry about that, because it's not safe for you to be visible. So the unconscious mind's like this frenemy, right? It's like, I really, really want you to live. I'm looking after you. But it's almost like it constricts us, right? And it's not its fault. It's just that it has been fed all of this information at a very early age, up until about the age of 6 or 7 is when it is primed for this information to be absorbed about our world and our place in it and whether we're safe and all this other information to keep us alive. So that's where the unconscious operates from. It's pretty basic. It's just survival. So unless we are going into the unconscious, we're just skimming the surface. Christine, your experience with talk therapy over the years has always annoyed me because I don't have close friends to listen to me and support me, so I have to pay someone to listen to me. Yes, to unload my emotions for an hour, absolutely. And look, this is an interesting point that you raise, and this is where talk therapy can have its place, and this is also where a good support network and sisterhood has its place, right? So, and even using this space, even using a space like this, free of judgment, I ensure this container, as I call it, my container of community, I ensure this is a judgment-free zone, right? I maintain this space with that integrity. That is how I function. That is how I operate. That is my operating system. And so that is always the intention this space aligns with. So you can absolutely unload anything you want here and no one is going to judge you. Okay, let me just assure you of that, anyone who is watching. And that has been proven time and time again. And I love that about this space. And I thank you all for maintaining this space with that same integrity. Chantal, my 3 sessions with you held so much so fast. Yes, yay! And now you're doing amazing work as well. And it's so good to watch you just out there, that ripple effect. I love it. And it just does, it deepens our understanding. It deepens the work we do. If you're a coach, a healer, you know, I was a healer, I did this work and it absolutely deepened my work. I would not be able to hold this space with this integrity if I had not done that work. So yeah, it's a beautiful process, and that's why I love it, because it doesn't have to be, it's not a replay, JD, you're catching me live. It doesn't have you pouring your heart out in the realm. That's our little sisterhood, our imaginal realm. I'll read it. So yeah, you know, it doesn't have to be years and years of talk therapy. But the interesting point that you raised, Christine, is that we do need to have our stories validated, right? So we have this innate need as humans to be heard. I'm live, yay! We have an innate need to be heard. We have an innate need to be validated, right? It makes us feel like we belong. Again, this is about feeling safe, feeling loved, and feeling like we fit in and we matter. All the things we need in order to survive this world and feel safe. So we have this really, really strong urge to be validated. So we do need to share our story. Whenever somebody comes to me, because the processes I use, we don't talk about your stories, right? We don't sit there and go, blah, 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 tell me about your story, or tell me about that when that happened, tell me about when this happened. Importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, please, 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 if you take anything from this, just take this one thing. Please, please do not go to anybody or seek out any type of process that promises to put you back in a memory. If you have forgotten something, if you can't remember something, if you just really like there's a blank spot, you know, people come to me and they're like, what if I don't remember? Because it's like from the age of 6 to 9, I don't remember anything. And I'm like, don't worry about it. And we're not going to remember, right? I'm not going to dig around in there. I'm not going to regress you. I'm not going to do any of that in order to bring that memory to the surface, because we do not need to, okay? What happens when you are not remembering, there's a reason for that. The unconscious mind is keeping you safe, right? Whatever it is that you don't remember, it's because it is best for you not to remember, right? It is for your own good and your own well-being. The frenemy within, the unconscious mind, has locked that away and gone, you don't need to go there, girlfriend. That's too much, right? Just leave it alone behind that door. So we don't want to go, you know, kicking doors down and searching for what might have happened. The reason being is there, and this is pretty mind-blowing and probably the conversation for another brunch, but I'll touch on it now. There is no true memory. In fact, I will do a brunch on this because it's fascinating. When I say to people there's no true memory, they kind of look at me like, what do you mean? Because it almost, when we acknowledge that no memory that we have of our life is actually how that event occurred, then it kind of makes people think, oh, well, does that mean my life's just been meaningless? No, it doesn't mean your life's been meaningless. You've had all of these events and experiences, not necessarily to collate lots of memories of them. This is our human side that wants to do that, but to collate a lot of experience and learning and growth and evolution, right? That's why you have these experiences. It wouldn't matter a hoo-ha if you forgot about everything that you had experienced. Some people do. At the end of their life, they forget about it all. Bliss, bliss. A lot of those people are in bliss. Some of them go the other way into anger. Oh, that's not good. But many of them go into bliss. Right? It's like they're back in their childhood, right? Just exploring, uncovering the world is new, right? They've forgotten all the other shit. And that's like hallelujah for some people, right? I believe a lot of people end up, you know, with dementia, with Alzheimer's, very much trauma related, right? Too much to handle in their life, too much shit gone down, too much stuff left unresolved, not dealt with. And it's like the mind just goes, well, we'll just switch off now because there's too much there, okay? It's like another self-preservation mechanism toward the end. So also a reason that more and more people are, you know, early onset Alzheimer's and things like that, I believe, because people are exposed to more and more trauma. It's compounding in our collective. So we do not need to dig around. There are no true memories. If you put 5 people who experience the same singular event into different rooms and ask them to tell you about that event, describe it in detail, they would all give you a different recounting, whether it happened 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago. Because we all experience things through our own filter of perception, of experience, of emotion, our unconscious core beliefs, our stories. We're all processing these events differently to start with when they're occurring, and then they go through the filter of everything that has to do with memory. And interestingly, if we've experienced a lot of trauma, our memory filter doesn't work quite so well as it should. It is one of the centers of the brain that is impacted, the hippocampus, the memory center, that is impacted by trauma directly. So, kind of get off track there, but if you don't remember something, there's good reason. But if you come to me and you say, like, you start telling me, and some people will, right? Some people will just want to tell you their story, and they're used to it, right? We're all used to it. We're all used to thinking we have to tell everyone our story. You're not going to be able to fix me if I don't tell you what's wrong with me. Doesn't work that way. It's just some things in your brain that need rewiring, right? It's not about fixing you. So, you know, if a lot of people just feel that they need to vent, they need to explain, right? I need to explain this to you. So if people start to explain a story to me and they're going into great detail, I'm like, okay. So I think one of two things. First of all, I think, is there a reason they need to tell me this intuitively, or is there a reason? Is there something that's going to come of this conversation that needs to be woven into their session? So, you know, if I intuitively sense that, yes, I need to listen to this story, I will listen. Otherwise, I will do one of two things, right? Or I'll do one thing. First thing I'll do is I'll ask them, have you told anybody else this? Right? Have you ever told anybody else this story? And if they say no, then I let them tell me the story. I give them the safe space to do that, because they need to be validated. They need to be heard, right? And that actually assists in the process of resolving the trauma where it resides. But if they say, yes, I've told this story, some people are like, oh my God, I've told this story. And sometimes I know, I can just sense it. I'm like, oh, here they go. They're used to it, right? It's like they've got the whole story sequentially down pat because they've told it so many times, and they just go off and it's like, you know, they're reeling off a script. I'm like, okay, you've told this story a few times now. You actually don't need to retell this story, and here's why. So then I explain to them why it is actually of more detriment to the process of effectively healing and resolving the trauma where it resides, right? Why talking about it is not going to help you do that. In fact, it is going to be detrimental to the rest of this process. The reason being is because the more we talk about these stories, the more they embed. It's like if you watch your favorite movie over and over and over again, eventually you can, like, you know what the character's going to say, you read off the script, you know, it's all very old news to you. And that's the same with these events. If we continue to pull them up to the surface and relive them over and over and over and talk about them over and over and over, those, I call them trauma loops, right? So what happens is those past aspects of self who lived that experience, they get stuck in a loop of that trauma. It's like a videotape loop over and over and over. And we're triggered into these videotape loops. And when we're triggered into them by certain emotional experiences, just normal things that can happen in our day-to-day life, doesn't have to be trauma, it can just be like the boss yelling at us or a spouse, you know, says something to us or whatever. It can trigger us back into one of these trauma loops, and around and around and around we go, right? It's like it comes back up to the surface. So it actually is re-triggering and re-traumatizing us every time we get on one of these loops. And talking about it just turns it on. It's like, oh, there it is, like switching a play button. Here we go again, round and around. And the unconscious is reliving this stuff. The thing that's controlling 95%, the director, is constantly reliving this trauma and responding and creating your responses and reactions to the outside world based on the reliving of that trauma loop. Does this make sense? Hands up if it makes sense. Let me know if you're watching this live, catching it on the replay. Let me know if this is making sense to you. Are you having some like, oh, okay, I see, I get it now. Christine, I wish I'd remembered that a few months ago when I had an absolute breakdown at work over the simplest thing. I still don't know where those emotions inside me came from. Well, a really, really good, a good place to start exploring from. Absolutely good place to start exploring from. That self-awareness, that acknowledgement is a really, really good basis from where to start exploring. And we have to explore these things as the curious observer, not the critical observer, the curious observer. There's a difference. Is that why you can't remember what you did yesterday? Possibly, Christine. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Inconsequential. Yesterday's gone. Yesterday's gone. JD, it will surface when you need it to, from my experience. Yes, yes. Making so much sense, JD. Awesome. I'm preaching to the choir, girl. I know. So this is, as you can tell, something I'm a little bit passionate about. And, you know, because I see it all the time. I see people who, like I said, these women who come to me, and God, I feel for them. You know, they feel so much guilt. They feel so drained and depleted, and like, you know, some of them have just lost all hope, You know, they're just like, I'm broken and I'm never going to be well. And to live like that, not live, you're not even living when you're there. You're in survival mode. You're in shutdown survival mode. You're not living in that space. You're just surviving day to day. And it sucks. It is painful, physically painful, mentally painful, emotionally painful. And it's not necessary. It is not necessary for us to sit in this space and to constantly relive it over and over and retell it over and over. You know, we deserve so much more. We deserve to just be able to resolve it where it resides and get on with our life. So, and that is what we have to do. We have to resolve it in the unconscious mind and the energetic body, the emotional body. You know, we have to understand where the trauma sits, and we have to, you know, from an empowered place, resolve that trauma from that place where it resides. Not on the surface. The surface does nothing. It does so little. You know, there is so much underneath. It's like that old, you know, the iceberg. I could draw you a picture. I'm so good with my pictures. Perfect sense. Awesome, Christine. I could draw you the iceberg, you know, like here's the tip of it and the bottom of it. So here's the tip of the iceberg. Look at this. I can do it with my hands. Oh my gosh, I'm a mime. Look, so here's the tip of the iceberg up here, right? So this bit, here's the surface, here, my hand, and here's the tip of the iceberg, this other hand. And then underneath, see my arms, like that triangle they're forming, like there's this big space down here. That was awesome, wasn't it? That was even better than one of my drawings. That is what's going on underneath. That's what's going on underneath. And if we are just sitting on the surface, you know, we're sitting on the top of that iceberg and having a bit of a cup of tea and talking about it, then we are not getting to the underneath layers, the deeper parts where it resides. There's no point. It's like weeding a garden. I have all of these analogies. They're great. But it's like weeding a garden. You know, you're going along and you're pulling out, and you know how you get those weeds that are really belligerent and they've got like roots and layers and tap roots, and they go like squirreling off in all these different directions. There's a grass that we have over here called, I don't know if you have it other places, probably. I think it's couch grass, we call it. And it's this sort of like weedy, horrible grass. And you try and pull it out, and it's like this long, big thing, like a tentacle, and it just keeps going, and you pull more and more and more. And it's so hard to get to the actual roots of it. You know, you end up pulling chunks out from the surface, and that's about it. And then it just comes back. It just comes back again. It just comes back to the surface. It's the same thing. When we're doing conventional therapies, what we're frequently doing is just pulling the tops of these things off. Just you know, the surface stuff. We're cleaning up the surface. You know, the surface looks great and shiny and wonderful. Woohoo! There might even be a smile on the face of the surface, you know, for a week or two. And then the weeds start to come back because the roots have not been dealt with. The foundational roots have not been pulled out where they are residing. Okay, so it's not going to keep coming back and smacking us in the face. That doesn't mean, and I always have this disclaimer, you know, because I don't want people to expect a panacea. There is no miracle panacea. There is nothing that is going to stop you from having any challenges in your life, from experiencing any what we consider negative emotion, even though it's not negative. It's just the contrast that we have to experience in order to know when we're in alignment and vibration and when we're not. For those who've done the frequency shift, you'll know what I'm talking about. But, you know, so we have to experience all of these emotions. But, you know, any type of healing journey we take is not about then repressing those emotions. Often healing journeys that ask you to spiritually bypass. So they'll ask you to be positive, positive, positive on the surface, no matter what's going on underneath. Those things are not getting beyond the surface level, quite obviously, right? They're not resolving much at all for you. In fact, it's probably compounding it, because all you're doing is really just repressing it all and pretending it's not there. And pretending it's not there doesn't make it go away. It's like the weeds. You know, you can just sit there and go, no, it's not there. I'll just smile. I'll put some roses over the weeds. I'll put a bit of mulch over the weeds. They're just going to keep showing through, right? That you can't hide this stuff forever. And you can't skim over it and slap Band-Aids on the surface and expect that it's not going to, you know, come out again or appear again, or, you know, that one of those weeds is going to rear its ugly head again. It doesn't happen. So just be mindful and aware that, you know, there is foundational stuff that many of us need to deal with. And when we deal with that foundational stuff, what it does is it gives us that beautiful, clean garden, right? It's like when we actually pull out all of the weeds, it gives us this beautiful, clean garden. Now, does that mean, that doesn't mean just like a beautiful, clean garden that's perfectly pruned and perfectly weeded, it still needs tending. It still does. It needs to be tended. So there's no miracle panacea or cure that is going to take away every weed in the world, right? The weeds have a place. They have a place in the ecosystem, the environment, just as much as the flowers and the trees and the beautiful green grass does. And it is the same for our emotional experience and, you know, all of this stuff that resides within us. There is a place for it. And so what the deeper work does, when we pull out the roots of this stuff, what it means is that when one of those little seeds scatters into our garden, our beautiful weed-free garden, when a seed scatters, it may even take hold. It may start to like just kind of shoot up a little bit from the ground before you notice it, right? Suddenly you're noticing, oh, there's a weed over there that I've neglected to have a look at. I didn't see the seed come and just sit on the ground. Maybe you saw it when the seed just floated in. Maybe it was one of those cute little dandelion seeds. No, dandelions aren't weeds. But maybe it was just one of those cute little seeds that just floated in and landed on your beautiful, clean, weed-free garden. And you went, oh, I see what that's going to do. That's going to become a big, bad, horrible weed. And before it takes root, I'm going to deal with that. And I'm going to take it out of my garden. If it's a dandelion, you wouldn't do it because dandelions aren't weeds. But again, hey, another story, another day. You know, but it could be that that seed takes hold, it starts to grow, it starts to sprout. And, you know, maybe it's a little like this before you actually recognize it for what it is. And you go, oh, there's a little weed growing in my garden. Okay. And so then you're going to go and pull that out as well, right? And that's all it is then. It becomes a process of tending your garden. Your garden's no longer overrun with weeds. You're not frantically mulching over the top of the weeds or trying to, you know, chuck things on top of it to hide the weeds. You're not doing any of that. It's not like people walking in going, yeah, there's some nice bits here, but boy, there's like a lot of, have you noticed the weed? No, don't talk about the weeds. We're not paying attention to those. It's not like that anymore, right? It's this beautiful, clean garden where you get to plant whatever you want to plant. You can plant the beautiful flowers, the beautiful trees, beautiful things that you want to create in your world without the weeds cluttering up and sucking up all the nutrients and taking away all the nutrients from those beautiful dreams that you're creating. That's the whole point. It's like a little secret garden, your own little inner secret garden. So if you have any questions, does anyone have any questions about any of that? That was a big brain dump at this time of the morning. All the things that I felt I needed to share with you about this. It is so important. This stuff is really important. You know, I believe this is the way we heal our planet, by healing ourselves. And so I think, you know, if we can speed up the work, you know, if we can all get to a place where we're tending our nice, beautiful gardens and we're not letting them be overrun with weeds, then we could have a beautiful collective human garden on our planet. The Garden of Eden, right? Heaven. This is our heaven. And we're cluttering it up with weeds, people. So, you know, if there are weeds that need pruning, you know, if there are things that need to be pulled out at the root where it resides, then, you know, reach out. Just reach out, have a conversation, you know, find out a little bit more, find out how you can really get to the heart of it, find out how you can pull those roots out once and for all and resolve the trauma where it sits and de-weed your garden. Maybe I should call myself the gardener's helper, the gardener's companion, something like that. Anyway, you can de-weed your garden. I've done it, and I see all of the women I work with, the beautiful women I work with, do it all the time. It is absolutely possible. And it's not as hard as you think. It doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to take years of talk therapy. Please, please, please don't do that to yourself. You're just embedding yourself in that pain, and no one needs to be there. I know what it's like, and I would not wish it on my worst enemy. Please don't do that to yourself. Find, if it's not what I do, that's okay, but find something very, very similar. There are some incredible, incredible processes that are recognizing now the impacts of trauma, the residual effects of trauma on our mind and body, and are really working with that. But yeah, these are the things that you want to look for. And if it resonates with you, do it. Make the calls, find out about it. There'll be a little inkling of fear that's going to get in your way. That's those unconscious core beliefs, right? Trying to keep you safe. But, you know, you might be safe in your weedy little garden. That doesn't sound right. I was in a weedy little garden, so I say it with no judgment. And we all have beautiful things in our gardens too. They just get overrun with the damn weeds. But, you know, it might be safe, but it's not where you want to be. It's not the view that you want for the rest of your life. You know, you don't want to be stuck there. So reach out, okay? And know that you can absolutely change things for yourself. It is entirely possible, and it does not have to, like I said, take years and years. JD, it's better than talk therapy. Sure is. For sure, you've done both. Yep, me too. And it is most definitely better than talk therapy. I will vouch for that too. All right, thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, these things I get a little passionate about, I tend to rant. You know, if you are in any kind of therapy at the moment, you know, do not take this as I should just dump all of that immediately or anything like that. Like, please do know that there are places for these processes, and sometimes people need to go through those years of talking about it to be ready to do the deeper work. You know, so that can be the case, and everyone has their own journey to take. So, you know, you need to take it for you in the way that you feel is right, okay? And you need to be, importantly, with anybody you take that journey with, you need to feel safe, you need to feel certain, like they've got you, and you need to really feel trusting, like you can lean into that space, because that's how the deep work happens, when we really lean into that space. All right, thank you for joining me. Love you too, JD. Christine, love listening to you. Thank you for your support. Oh, you're very, very welcome, beautiful. All right, like I said, if you want to reach out, please do. You can message me. I will also put up a link if you want to book a call with me. You can do that as well. I do offer complimentary calls for people who believe they are ready to take the journey. If you believe you are ready to take the journey, then book a call with me. Let's talk, right? Have a beautiful rest of your week. Have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead or evening ahead, wherever you are in the world. I'll be joining you again for another brunch probably on Friday. Also, the winner of our frequency shift, yay, Paula, congratulations. Thank you to those of you who came along on the frequency shift. Really, really enjoyed that journey. And again, thank you for being a beautiful, supportive space where people can share their stories and can feel validated and supported. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. Bye for now.